He's alive!
Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to Bookenstein. I'm Brooks, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Peyton Jones. I'm actually in Peyton's house today. And we're also joined by a special guest, Dave Ferguson, who is the author of Hero Maker. Got my copy right here.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's actually, this is no joke, this is one of 5 books that I keep extra copies of at my house that I give to people because it's so practical. But you might know Dave, he's the co-founder of things like Exponential, New Thing, Community Christian Church. And one thing that you probably won't read in any of his bios, if you go, this is kind of a fun fact, if you go back to some of his old videos from Exponential or like 20 years ago, he looks exactly the same. He has not aged.
He is not aged.
I think personally, I think he's a vampire, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Dave, welcome to the show.
Brooks, thank you. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Yeah, this happens to be Halloween, so we can work that vampire angle a little bit.
This is actually me dressed up like I looked 20 years ago. So there you go.
Yeah.
I'm dressed as an extremely cool person, which is why I'm looking the way I'm looking today. But this book, I gotta agree with Brooks on this. This is one of those books where I drop this title in conversation. I drop it when I'm teaching, if I'm mobilizing people. It just lends itself to the church planting world in general. And this is not a church planting show, but that's the world I live in. But I have to say, going back to when this was a theme for the Exponential Conference, there have been a couple times I've gone, but the Hero Maker was the first time where you could feel God in the room. Like you knew that the Holy Spirit had owned this message, and not to get overly mystical, but you felt the presence of the Holy Spirit at that conference. It was like God was saying, this is a message you need to listen to. And there was just something special. I don't know if you felt that, Dave, but there was something special about that conference.
Yes, but what sticks out to me the most too? Do you remember who gave the opening talk at that conference?
No.
So it was Andy Stanley. And honest to goodness, I mean, because I've talked about this how many times, right? I mean, Hero Maker, his talk on Hero Maker is the best talk I've ever heard.
Really?
It was frustrating.
He out Hero Makered the Hero Maker.
He sure did. Yes. But no, there was something about that too. I think and I don't think it was necessarily what I brought to it, because I feel like what this book was really a collection of experiences, both through Exponential and New Thing and a community they were able to bring to this. And I felt like people go like, it kind of, I think it did in some way articulate what a lot of people who want to lean into this kind of movement making possibility, going like, yeah, okay, that put language to it. And I think maybe that's what happened.
Well, I have my Hero Maker backpack, and that tells you I bought a lot of copies of your book, because you had to buy a lot of copies of that book. So like Brooks, I gave it out. But, I want to ask you, other than having a deadline for the Exponential Conference theme, what actually was the reason that what made you write this book?
I mean, I think there was that. I mean, but I think part of the reason it became an exponential theme is because I can remember being in the room. Oh gosh, who was in the room? Todd was definitely in the room, and a couple other people. But I felt like, in some ways, it was like this is the kind of leader I would like to have been. You kind of get to the end of your life, and if people would say, "Oh, Peyton was this kind of leader," or Brooks was this kind of leader, it was kind of like, no, if someone said this, he was a hero maker, the way we described it there, I'd go like, all right, I'll take that. That's a good trade. So I think there was I think probably out of several of us in that room feeling like that's who we wanted to be. We made it the theme, and then that theme really kind of, then we said, okay, how do we actually put something together so we can get in front of everybody?
It's great.
Yeah. And I have a Hero Maker backpack too. It's my pickleball backpack. I use all the time.
That's awesome. I love it.
Perfect size. I think one of the strongest points about the book and the reason we keep talking about it over and over is its sticky language, right? Like, I mean, permission giving, multiplication thinking, just like everyone understands what that is as soon as they hear it. And I'd be interested to know, like, I mean, how intentional was that process with between you and Warren trying to come up with that? I mean, that to me, it seems like coming up with that kind of language is really, really difficult to do, but you did it really well.
Thanks. No, I think that was an intentional part because I mean, for those who are familiar with the book will know, but those who don't and maybe check it out will discover is not only did we have like 5 practices, but each of the practices we also gave a correlating tool. So here's a simple tool that you can also use, like with multiplication thinking, we gave them the napkin. Hey, here's what you can do on the back of a napkin. With permission giving, we said, hey, here's the 4 most important letters of the alphabet. We call them I, C, N, U, and to have I, C, N, U conversations with people and disciple multiplying. But here's the 5 steps of apprenticeship. I think partly, I think it's kind of a knack that God's given me. But also I think because I'm still a pastor in a local church and you want people to actually do the stuff. I think you're consistently, and you guys both know what this is like, because I mean, you're doing it too. You want to help them do it in a way that's accessible. And if all we can do is kind of articulate the theology of it, but not really kind of put the cookies on the lower shelf where they're accessible, I mean, I think we've done a disservice. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes you get kind of people will give you grief. Like the book after this I wrote was called Bless. Now we've been doing the Bless practices for 8 or 9 years. Wrote the book, and you'll get grief because like, oh, so that's how cheesy can you be? It's like, B, begin with prayer, L, listen, eat, serve, share your story. But people remember it. And I think the same thing happened with Hero Maker too. It was going like, okay, here's something really sticky. I would contend that a lot of the folks in your church and a lot of the leaders in your church, they want to be engaged in the mission. But I mean, they're also in the middle trying to hold their marriages together, trying to pay their bills, trying to raise their kids, all the things that life shoots at them. And if you can just make it as accessible as possible, they will try. They want to give their life for a good cause. And so, yeah, it was, we worked pretty hard at that. And there's a few things you'd change on it, but overall I felt like, I felt like it was like, okay, yeah, that worked.
That's awesome. I actually have a personal Hero Maker story about Dave Ferguson. I was a first-time author, and my book Church is Zero was just coming out. I was unknown. I was fresh back from the mission field, and I had been tracking people in America, and I can't remember. I don't think I had gone to Exponential yet, but I had read your book, a couple of your books actually. I had been grabbing everything I could. And I think I read, oh gosh, I can't remember. It had matches on the cover. I can't remember what it was.
On the Verge.
On the Verge. It was on the Verge. We were just talking about that book last night.
Which, by the way, I do like what Alan and I did, but was not very sticky.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I reached out to you and I said, hey, would you endorse my book? And as an unknown, that was so hard. And you, without blinking, just said, sure, Peyton, didn't know me from anyone, and just agreed to do it. And it gave me the ability to go to other people and say, hey, would you endorse it? Dave Ferguson, here's Dave Ferguson's endorsement. And it made other people more ready to do it. But I will never forget that generosity. And you modeled that hero making to me as an author, to just say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to help you succeed. So I personally have a Hero Maker story from you. You were the first one, and it actually really helped me out. So thank you. But
it turned out to be a good investment, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man, if you ever have trouble sleeping, just grab that grab one of my books, and it's a great sleep aid. So you've done a great service to the world.
Yeah, but
But
you have made a significant contribution to the church planting world, and I'm super grateful for that, and delighted to be a small part of it.
no, huge thanks for that. But in hero making, obviously there's the different practices. Which is either one that's your favorite or one that comes most naturally to you?
I think there's two of them that are kind of favorites and seem to come naturally to me. I think one is the permission giving part, like having the IC&U conversations. There's few things more enjoyable than sitting across from a young church planter, and I'm thinking about one guy in particular who planted in Southern California, brilliant, great gifts and stuff. And I remember like courageously, we're talking like this, like we are on Zoom, and he's like, you know what? And it was like, because it's hard to say your dreams out loud. And he's like, I would love to plant 50 churches before it's all done. And partly because some of the experiences I've had and knowing the gifts I could totally see in this guy, if he would just get this multiplication thing going, I was like, dude, you'll do 50 before you're 40. And I'm telling you, let me help you out. You could do 500. Because if you just start some churches that also are investing in other churches also, I mean, just a few generations, I'm telling you, there's 500 in you, and you could just see his eyes light up. You know what I mean? And having that kind of an IC in you, I love that. The other, so that's permission giving, the second practice. The other one I love is multiplication thinking. Some of that even kind of happened today. Got time for a quick story here? Okay.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
So post-pandemic at Community Christian Church, we come out of that and, hit like everybody else was. And I told our team, I said, listen, so we're making a shift from being one church with multiple locations to one church with multiple expressions. And so in addition to the locations we had across the city and suburbs, we began to talk about, okay, what does it also look like for us to continue to plant churches in prisons, have locations in prisons? But then in addition to that was also the digital space, because we were at a profoundly bigger influence digitally and online than we did before. But the other one was micro churches, and we hadn't done anything in micro churches. So that was going to be one of our kind of 4 expressions. And put my arm around a guy, Rodrigo Cano, who's on our team here. He's Rodrigo Brooks?
Yeah.
Good dude, really
Yeah.
good dude. You'd love him, Peyton. Seriously, he's got it going on. And I said, okay, let's pull together a team. So he pulled together kind of a small team. I said, I really want to give this micro thing a run. And I was really thinking predominantly just right in the Chicago area. Well, anyway, I'll fast forward. Him and his team start training people and offering the online training. And so we start a couple here in Chicago, and they're going pretty well. Well, then we have somebody through communityonline.tv join us and says, hey, can I go through your training? He's from a guy named Kali from India. And we're like, sure, why not? So he goes through it, and you know how this happens now. You're already ahead of me. So he does it, but then he also, next time around, goes back and gets 3 guys, and then they go through it. In fact, talk about a hero maker, every one of the micro churches he starts, he encouraged them all to have at least 3 apprentices. So now we're 2 years into this, and we have 96 micro churches we've started in the last 2 years. 6 of them are in Chicagoland. Some others are across the United States, but we also have like 60 in India, 10 in Cuba, and 20 in Uganda, and over 2,000 people. And so today I'm standing before our staff and I'm telling them, I'm saying, listen, because like some of that doesn't feel real. Does that make sense? You're kind of like, is it real? And no, we know, because we have connections with people in India who know Kali. Yeah, he's really doing the stuff. We just sent a couple people to Cuba. Yeah, they're really doing the stuff. It's real. And I told our team, I said, because we're spending so little money on this, and we have all these people who are coming to us saying, hey, we want to do this. We want to train church. We want to start a church. We want to multiply churches. And we're just giving them do it. And it's a simple digital platform. And then we provide coaching for them on a regular basis. And I said, if we got to pay attention to this, because in the next 18 months, this is going to be our largest location. And not only that, I'd say 5 years from now, I mean, again, multiplication thinking, this has the capacity because it's such a low dollar amount and it's a digital platform. We could be talking about 100,000 people that we could reach. And so I think I'm back to the multiplication. That kind of, when I begin to see things like that, that kind of comes pretty natural for me because when I can see scale, and I like to, I think when you can see it and talk about it, then it kind of expands people's missional imagination for kind of what's possible.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is. It's really something.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Brooks. What are you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think my favorite's the permission giving.
Yeah, why is
Because
that?
that I see in you conversation is just so much fun to watch people. Like even last week, me and a couple guys were talking to a young leader and just say, hey, this is what we see in you. And he was like, wow, I never saw myself as having any kind of like anything unique about me.
Yep.
And it's just so it's fun to watch people get those moments.
One of the things that happened to me as I would teach this different places too, I would often say, every one of you, you're in this room because somebody saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself, or gave you a chance to do something that maybe they really even shouldn't have, but they believed in you. And almost everybody's heads was nod. But then I started having people, just raise your hand if that's true. What I started noticing, see what you guys think about this too, is then I'd have women come up to me afterwards and they'd go like, that never happened for me.
Wow.
And so I think maybe in the church space too, disproportionately, a lot of the guys, they get those I see in you statements, and not all, and I think some of the women don't experience that. So, but you're right, when you're able to do that for a young leader, and maybe particularly, as you give opportunities for young female leaders, it's just kind of like, wow, you see that in me, and I do love that. It's like you can just see the life come into them.
Yeah. So, I mean, Hero Maker's been out now for 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the book, you're given all kinds of stories of different things, but have you seen people take the book or take something from the Exponential Conference and they've really become a hero maker? Like, do you have a couple of stories that you might share about that?
Oh,
They're great examples.
Trying to think who that would be. I mean, one of the people that came to mind is a guy named Matt Millar. Do you know Matt?
A little bit.
Okay, so Matt's our global operations director for New Thing, and first met Matt through Bishop Oscar Miru of Nairobi Chapel. Bishop Oscar, this was super honoring, came to me, we actually had lunch here in Chicago, and he told me, he said, hey, he'd planted a ton of churches, Nairobi Chapel had. He said, I've kind of gone back and forth on starting a network, doing some things. He says, and we had some people we both knew, and he said, but I think I'd really like to be a part of what New Thing's doing. And I was like, holy smokes. Yeah, sure. You want to be in charge of it and so in many ways, he's the one that initially gave us a vision for really going outside the United States and the whole globe. It's the global body of Christ, and how each part of the globe brings a different important gift. But anyway, having said that, when we got ready to start something in sub-Saharan Africa, I asked him, I said, hey, who do you think, who should we have lead that region for us? And we hadn't planted really any churches, but we were getting ready to start something. And he said, Matt Millar. And I was like, Matt, because he's a white kid from Wisconsin. And I was, because I'm trying to be, culturally appropriate, and
Right.
You want an indigenous leader to do something. But there you got Bishop Oscar, he's the bishop. He's from Nairobi Chapel. He's, I was like, all right. And actually, Matt had done a leadership residency with Oscar. So went through that with great humility, came to Chicago, spent 9 months doing an apprenticeship with Patrick O'Connell. So he got the kind of the whole new thing, DNA. Then went to Africa. And I mean, just from scratch began to connect with different leaders. And everywhere he went, I mean, he began to apply these 5 practices. But maybe the best expression of that was after doing that for 5 years, they got to the place where I think the last year he was in charge as the Sub-Saharan regional director, they'd planted 800 churches. But along the way, he apprenticed a guy named Benga, Pastor Benga, who's a terrific, charismatic leader, a guy from Africa, and apprenticed him and then put him in charge of the Sub-Saharan African region. And this year, he has a goal of planting 2,000 churches. And it's just, to see that happen in that way. And I love the way Matt now oversees all of our regional directors. Matt, just the same way Matt was kind of I wouldn't have thought of Matt, but again, you have Oscar who has the IC&U conversation with Matt. Matt says, okay. And then Matt is more successful than we ever would have expected. And then he says, okay, I'm going to apprentice someone, and he apprentices Benga. And now Benga's doing it. It looks like Benga's going to also go ahead and do even greater things than him. That's one example I think that immediately comes to mind.
That's pretty satisfying. I mean, that's how you're winning is, and also, to see it cross cultures, which I always think is if a principle can't cross cultures, then it might be something that we just made up, and it might be helpful. But the hero maker thing, man, that is just such a Jesus thing. Like that would just, it's got legs, and it's got missional legs, and it's got global missional legs. So, I mean,
you might find it interesting, Peyton, even right now, because Exponential Europe, they just finished their first global conference in Berlin, and it went really terrific.
Nice.
And actually, Oyvind Auckland, who's our CEO over there,
I remember him. Yep.
That's a good dude there. There's a hero maker.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to do 200 roundtables that they think will reach about 4,500 people, but their theme is actually hero maker.
Wow.
Now, to contextualize it, they are calling it kingdom leader, but they're using the 5 practices and everything. Part of it is some of the things with hero, I think, particularly in like a German context and some of those contexts, they felt like didn't work in some settings. And so they got rid of that. But the 5 practices, that's what they're teaching that now all over Europe.
Yeah. Some people are the concept of being a hero maker, they think, well, Jesus is the only hero. But I don't know, man. I remember Lloyd Jones once saying, I am a hero. He said, I am an unashamed hero worshiper. I look at Whitefield, Wesley. He just named all the people that he looked to that inspired him. And of course, we have that in Paul, right? Who, says, imitate me as I imitate Christ Jesus. He himself became a model. So the hero maker moniker for me, it really works. And plus I like Marvel and DC. So we're in good company.
Well, and I mean, I think I kind of feel like in, John 14:12, when, Jesus says, hey, the things I've done, and he's talking to his disciples, you're going to do even greater than these.
Amen.
And so in some ways he's like going like, no, you're the ones that are going to catalyze this movement. You're the ones that are going to take this gospel to more places around the world than me. I'm going to invest these 3 years in you, but no, you're going to be the heroes.
That's it, man. And Dave, like one of the cool things about you is you run new thing. You've now become the CEO of Exponential. Brooks and I are ex-employees. We never got to have you as our boss. That would have been kind of fun, but
hey, come on back.
But it's cool to see a leader like you. Don't you point at Brooks? He with us. But here's the thing, Dave. You're at this place in kingdom multiplication and advancing, God's cause and purpose and the gospel. And your story begins when you're in college on the back of a napkin. And with you, Dave, I don't think you ever stop being that dude, no matter, how broad your platform got or how God opened. You're still that college kid with the back of a napkin going, hey, I think I want to do this. And you just stayed a humble leader. Like, and that to me is really impressive. You've stayed you, and you've just stayed a follower of Jesus. So it's not surprising to me over the years to, like this message, I do honestly feel you authentically live this out, right? And so that you are really just about, hey, let me help you do what you got to do. And because you're humble, I know you're probably not going around advertising, but who might be a couple of people that you were a hero maker for? Like I told you my Dave Ferguson hero maker story. Who might be some people that we might not realize that you actually got to play a part in their story and be a hero maker for?
That you wouldn't know. I don't know. Okay, here's one. That it's a favorite. Brooks might have heard me talk about this recently. So this was kind of a fun story. Guy in my small group. He's actually still in my small group right now. He actually hosts my group on Tuesday nights. A guy named Rick Bole. So Rick just loves kids and families of kids who have disabilities, right? I mean, special needs, just loves it. I mean, he's been involved with the Capernaum program. You familiar with Capernaum? It's a part of Young Life. So you know Young Life.
Yeah, Young Life. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like their division for kids with special needs.
Oh,
And so he
cool.
he does that on a weekly basis. He also goes to their camp. It's like the highlight of his year. He comes back, and every small group, no matter what the question is, the answer somehow has to do with kids with special needs and Capernaum, and he tears up and just loves it. So he comes to an exponential that we had here in Chicago, a regional, and James Meeks was speaking. And James, we actually had the closing speaker at the last minute, couldn't make it. And James is here in Chicago. And I knew James. He's a huge African-American church on the South Side. Great dude. I said, hey, I need a favor. He said, okay, count me in. So he was substitute teaching, but he speaks in the closing session. And he basically, his talk is like, you don't need a building, okay, to plant a church. You just need to be available. You don't need money to plant a church. You just need to be available. You don't need people to plant a church. And that's his thing overall. You just need to be available. My friend Rick, I invited him, right, to Exponential, and he's like, I'm available. And so, and if anybody, your listeners been to Exponential in the 5th session, we always have this moment where you get to come forward for commissioning to say, I want to plant a church. So Rick goes forward and he's like, yeah, I want to plant a church. But we start having conversations and he's like, no, I think, I'm supposed to plant a church for people and families who have special needs. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so we sit down and we he's in sales, had been in sales, done really well. Actually, corollary to that, he ended up losing his job like a month later. And his response is like, well, now I'm more available than ever.
That's rad.
And I was like, no, dude, I think you could totally do this. Let us give you a little help. So I actually send him to Rodrigo, who we talked about before, the micro. So he goes to the micro church training, and Rodrigo's coaching him up because this is just he's a good dude who loves these people, but doesn't have any idea about church planning. But goes through it. It's like a 10-week deal. Comes out on the other end, and he's like, all right, I want to start it. Can I start something at the Yellow Box? That's our largest location for him right now. And I was like, sure. And so we give him our gym on Sunday nights. And basically he just sends the news out to his broad network of people. And last January, he launched a church right here at the Yellow Box, and for families and kids in particular who have special needs. And he had like 120 people show up. It was, It was awesome. And not so much the number, but because these are folks who, like, if they came on Sunday morning to the Yellow Box or one of our other services, they would definitely be welcome.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't feel comfortable because they're up and they're going to be active, and you're they're gonna respond verbally to different
I
things.
love it.
It's a little more of a free for all. And so Rick does that. I mean, every Sunday night, and now they're also breaking them up, starting small groups. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dave, and thanks for that, because my daughter has special needs,
Oh
and
wow.
back when I was in Wales, we saw the church that we planted out of Lloyd Jones's church actually saw a massive influx of people after opening up a service for people with special needs. It opened the floodgates because there's nothing out there for them. And we don't think about that. Even adding sign language to your church service,
Yep.
it opens a floodgate. So, man, just thanks for that. And what a cool story, and what a cool ministry.
And if you ever wanted to connect with Rick too, just to hear what he's doing,
Heck yeah.
in a heartbeat, Peyton, he would love
Oh,
it.
man.
Because I've been connected with other people too, and
Tell him the Church Planner podcast is hunting for him now. We're gonna nail him down and get him
that would
on
be
there.
awesome. That would be great to have him on the Church Planner podcast.
Absolutely. Well, man, thanks for coming on, Dave. Brooks, hold it up. The book has been Hero Maker. Our guest has been Dave Ferguson. 5 essential practices for leaders to multiply leaders. So be sure to grab that. And we want to thank you for tuning in to Bookenstein. And Dave, keep writing, man.
All right.